In January 1945, I believe it was a 43-page document, arrived on the desk of General MacArthur in Australia. It came through a circuitous route, and he got pretty excited about it. This was in great detail, and he liked what he read. He sent it to the White House, and it landed on Admiral Leahy's desk. Well, Admiral Leahy, he knew that if he gave the original copy to President Roosevelt, it would go in the memory hole. So he called Walter Trohan, who represented the Chicago Tribune in Washington, D.C. He says, Walter, I would like you to take this document and have it photocopied and put the photocopy in a safe where no one can see it. And then you have my permission to publish it the day the Japanese surrender. January 1945, remember. So the original comes back and he presents it to President Roosevelt, and Admiral Leahy said, I'd like to quote what General MacArthur said in his transmittal letter, that we should take advantage of this attractive settlement and stop the bloodshed, and more important perhaps, get the war over with before Joe Stalin gets over there, because Joe Stalin was still fighting with Germany then, January, see? That didn't end until April. So President Roosevelt said, and these are exact words, he says, old Doug is the best general we have, but he's a lousy politician. And with that, 2 days later, went off to Yalta, and we went to Iwo Jima, Okinawa, the Philippines. I estimate, and this was, you know, it could be plus or minus, 25,000 of us died during that period of time. So with the surrender papers in the White House, the Chicago Tribune published that the Sunday after the Japanese surrendered, August 19th, 1945.
And the papers were actually dated, the surrender papers? Like
January, yeah.
January.
Oh, yeah, 8 months.
Now, was there an outcry regarding that, or did they just hush it up, or what?
Oh, hush it up. It was, it only came out between Admiral Leahy's book and Antony Kubek's. In other words, if you go to any World War II veteran, I almost guarantee you he's not aware of this.
Not at all. It was published in the Chicago Tribune at that time.
And also another newspaper they had then, I think it was the Washington Daily, anyhow, it was published in Chicago Tribune. And then in the early 1950s, someone gave former President Herbert Hoover a copy of this newspaper. And he was shocked to read this thing. Well, he was living at the Waldorf Astoria in New York at the time, as was General MacArthur. Okay. And he went to his apartment and said, is this the same document that you received, you know, you received in January 1945? And MacArthur looked over and said, that's it. Of course, Herbert Hoover was shocked. But that did not become common knowledge because, well, the veterans would really get emotional. The veterans were sufficiently, you know, I mentioned earlier about I was unhappy because Poland and Manchuria was given to Joe Stalin. Well, American Legion, Veteran Foreign Wars, in those days were asking that same question. And they weren't getting answers. And they finally gave up. And they went on to other issues. Because you might say the obfuscation, I don't know if that's the right word, was horrible.